The colors we'll be using today are titanium white, phthalo blue, alizarin crimson, mountain mix, dark sienna, Van Dyke brown, sap green, cadmium yellow, yellow ochre, Indian yellow, and bright red. Now let's get started. Right here with a 2-inch brush with phthalo blue, coming up to the corner and just working across. Make sure you leave yourself some light spots in the sky. Just using little X strokes. Just applying phthalo blue. It's the only color we're using right now. Not really using a whole lot of pressure while we're working up here in the sky. And it's going to mix with that liquid white. And while it's mixing up there in the sky, you can see it getting a little lighter as we come down toward the horizon. That's all we're doing, just little X strokes. Pick up a little more paint, we'll come back up, kind of work on the corners a little. You kind of want your top area and your corners a little darker than you do the bottom. And it helps give you that feeling that you're looking into the painting rather than everything just being real flat. And that's all we're doing, just back and forth. And then just very slowly and very lightly, just go over it. And see how light it's already gotten down at the horizon? And now that's what we're looking for. Okay, now, using very light pressure, we just want to come back up and just kind of blend these colors in some. Be careful when you're doing this. You don't want to kill all your darks, because those dark areas that you leave, like the light areas, they leave actions in your sky. So we're just going to very slowly and very lightly blend these colors in. And if you see leaving those dark spots, see how it makes your sky look? It just gives you the just built-in actions already. Now next we're going to grab a little bit more of the phthalo blue. We're going to start at the bottom this time. We're going to pull straight in from the sides and work our way up. And as we work up, this time it's going to get lighter toward the horizon. And this will be hopefully what, if we use water in this painting, which I'm pretty sure we are, this will be our water area. Just tap the paint right on the brush. Don't take a lot of paint for this either. And then same thing on the other side. Start from the outside and pull the paint in toward the middle. Now I'm leaving that light spot in the middle, and when we blend over that, when we come back up, if you can leave a little light spot right there, it'll give you like a little shimmer of light across the water. And sometimes that effect it just helps the painting so much. All right, then we just take our brush, work our way down, just lightly blending over. See how that light spot's just automatically showing up? That's because we didn't have any paint there. It's back and forth. That's all we're doing. Long back and forth strokes all the way across the canvas. And just like that, we put our water in. And we just sit there and blend at the horizon, and just, it gives you that look that you can just look into the painting. All right, next, using a fan brush, we're going to add just a little bit of red to our white paint. Come right up to the canvas, making little small circles. With the corner of the fan brush, just little small circles. Now you can see that red in it. It's just enough to make it look like that cloud's got light in it. Keep the brush moving. Load it back up when you need to. Come right back up. Add a little bit more white to the tops, because you really want the tops looking like that sun's just bouncing right off of them. Now just like so. Just little circles. Keep the brush moving. Just like that. Just keep that brush moving. And we won't put a lot of clouds in this sky today. This painting just don't really need a lot of clouds. All right, come back down, load the brush up on both sides. Then we'll come back up Maybe not all the way over to the other side, but, kind of toward not really in the middle. Just maybe a little to the right, just a little off center. Still using the fan brush. Come right back up. Little circles. Just keep that brush moving, making them little circles. If you leave the brush in one spot, you'll end up creating cotton balls. All right, now with a 2-inch brush, just come up and very gently blend out the bottoms. With the top corner of the brush, stay out of the top and just blend out the bottom real lightly. Knock a little of that paint off the brush. Using just the top, come over to your other one. Same thing. Just blend out the bottom very little, very lightly. Trying to stay out the top. Now once you get both clouds blended real good on the bottom, knock all of that paint out that you can on the paper towel. Come back up. From the bottom, we're going to kind of sweep up and back. Kind of like in a backwards C. And just fluff them up. Just like that. Just fluff them up. And if you pull some of those little strings off the top, don't worry about that. Because right here, when you lightly brush across, very, very lightly, it'll get rid of all of those brush strokes and it'll just set those clouds right down into the sky. All right, now grab the knife and come up into the mountain mix. Get just a tiny roll of mountain mix on the knife. You can see, just a small roll. Come right up to the canvas. And with a lot of pressure, you want to push that paint like you're trying to push it through the canvas. You can see that blade bending on that knife as I'm applying pressure. And just make sure you got clean outside lines. That's all you're worried about at this point. You're not worried about any of the body of the mountain at this point. Right now, all you want is just to form it. And just make sure you got a good clean outside line. What's happening on the inside is not even important at this point. Okay, we'll get us a little more paint. Come right back up. And we'll start on this other side. Now, when you're building your mountain, you put your peaks wherever you want. But I like to keep mine kind of offset from each other. I don't like them to be the same height as the one across from it. It just, to me, it just gives the mountain a little more character if you can offset them peaks. But as you just keep your little keep your little paint on the knife. It don't take a lot, but you wanna make sure you got that little small roll. It really helps keeping that outside line good and clean. To me, that's one of the most important steps in making mountains, is to keep that outside line good and clean. It almost gives it a 3D effect when that line is just real sharp and clean. All right, we'll come out a little bit more on that right side. Maybe sneak in the last little peak there. And just come up, start pulling out some of the paint now. And at this point, you want to just kind of scrape out as much as you can, and then take that 2-inch brush, same brush we used earlier, come up and try to stay inside the line. Don't get outside the line. Just pull that paint down and out. That's all you got to do. Now, if you go to picking up too much paint, like if you left too much up there, just rub it on the paper towel and knock some of that paint out. But looks like we got lucky this time. We don't have a whole lot of extra paint in the brush this time. And all we're doing is just pulling that paint down and out. That's all. Just like that. Real gentle, but at the same time trying to, keep the shape of the mountain. Like you want to pour the paint kind of down in the direction that your mountain's going. And then just real lightly blend across the bottom. And that'll just set your mountain right in there. It already looks like it's just floating in air. Now with the knife, pull out your white paint. Pull it as flat as you can get it. I mean, really get that paint flat. Now once you get it as flat as you can get it, we're going to come right across, grab just a little roll of paint on the end of the knife. That's all you want. Then you're going to come right up, start at that first peak, no pressure. No pressure. Just let that paint touch. As soon as it touches, just start pulling it down with no pressure. And that paint it'll just pull right off the knife for you. That seems to be one of the biggest problems people have when they're making mountains, is getting that paint to break. But if you take that little roll of paint and when you come up to that next peak, don't let the knife touch. Just let the paint touch the canvas and then just lightly pull it down. Now you can see right here, I'm just using little short pulls, and then I'm going back up. I'm not doing one long sweep. I know Bob used to do that in his videos, but Bob only had 27 minutes to paint that painting. So take your time right here and just barely touch the paint to the canvas and just barely pull it down. And just take your time. And remember, no pressure. There's absolutely no pressure on that knife right now. I can't tell you how light I'm holding that knife. If I'm not careful, I'll drop it. That's how light I'm holding it. And it's absolutely no pressure. I know you may get sick of hearing that, but that is the biggest key in this. It's just barely touching. And then you kind of lay out the mountain the way you want it. You know, put your highlights where you want them. Just keep them coming down in the same direction. And that kind of shapes out your mountain for you. As you can see already, it's just taking shape. The way that the snow is just coming down that one side. And that's our highlight side. So that's the side that our light's hitting. Now when you go to making up the shadow color, after we get some more of the highlight put on, we're going to use some white, and we're going to use a little bit of the phthalo blue, and get just a real light blue color, real light blue. And then add a little bit of the same color you used, the mountain mix, to add right into your white and blue. And that'll kind of gray it down and it'll give you like a grayish blue, but leave it marble mixed. That way when you come up and start doing your shadows, and I like to use the little edge of my knife when I'm doing my shadows, but by leaving that dark color in it, it'll leave you some dark up there. You already got a dark color there, so maybe you'll be able to see. Well, you'll see it when we get on the bigger side. But that little edge just lets you get into those tight spots so much better. But now if you're good enough with your knife that you can use the big side, well, then use the big side. But I like to use that small side for that. It seems to work better for me. Come over to the next peak. We'll add a little bit of shadow right behind it. And you can see what the shadow color does already. It just sets the highlight up. It just makes it look like it's raised. Okay, you can start to see now how the color is just a little bit lighter than what we made the mountain with, but darker than our highlight. And it just looks like it puts that side in shade where the sun's coming across, and that our high side is just keeping that sun from getting to the other side. And it's just an illusion. That's all it is. Basically, all painting is just an illusion, using light and dark. But now I try to put this color on the same way, using little movements at one time rather than trying to do a whole big area at one time. And try to get as close to that outside line as you can without going outside of it. Sometimes that's difficult, and if you get outside of it, you can fix it, but it helps if you can stay inside the line. Good clean lines on a mountain are really, really important. All right, we'll come right down here now. We'll pick us up a little bit more to paint. It don't take as much paint on the shadow side, but you do want to you want to put enough that you can tell the difference between the highlight side and the shadow side. And I'm still using the little side, little edge of the blade. And you can see I'm just working it in small areas at a time. When you're doing this at home or painting for yourself, just, don't put a time restraint on yourself. Don't make it no harder than it has to be. Painting should be fun. You should be able to just sit there and relax and have fun creating. That's all you're doing. Just creating your own little world. And to me, that's the most fun part of it. Y'all have to let me know in the comments if y'all like this camera angle better too, because I'm trying some new things to make the channel a little more exciting for you guys. Try not to bore you to death. Okay. Now you can see how that color, by not killing all that dark, that color sits up in places, and it just looks like little high spots and low spots on that side of the mountain. And in real life, mountains have those. Bob used to say, the mountain goat's got to have a place to go. All right, now right here, all I'm doing is just taking some straight white, coming down here and just creating a whole new little ridge right there, a whole new little peak. And then once we get that part of it done with the white, we're going to come right on the back side of it, give it its own little highlight, and it'll look like another little baby mountain that just hadn't grew up yet right there on that side, which we know that's not right, but Now watch how that shadow just makes it stand up. It makes it its own individual little peak right there. And that's just from carrying the highlight one direction, one angle, bringing the shadow back the opposite angle. Because mountains are just angles. That's all it is. One going one way, the other one going the other way. Now you want to grab your 2-inch brush now and make sure it's good, clean, and dry. You gotta have it dry. Come up and just lightly tap. Now in the same direction that you brought the highlight color down, that's the same direction you want to tap that brush up into. Don't just come up there and make you a straight line across just tapping. Carry that paint back up the mountain in the same direction that paint's coming down. Just very light taps, very light. And then when you get to the shadow side, same thing. Use very light pressure, working the same angles that your paint's coming down, and just lightly tap. That's creating that little layer of mist at the bottom of the mountain. And that little layer of mist is real important. Now once you get that done, you want to pull it back up real lightly. Just don't pull it up outside of your mountain lines. Just real lightly pull it up and just lift that brush off the painting. and then brush out the rest of the little strokes of tap marks that you left real lightly. And just like that, you got your mist. All right, right here I used a little bit of white, a little bit of green, and a little bit of blue. It made me a light green color. Put just a little on the brush and come up. Tap across the bottom of your mountain here, but don't kill that mist. You want to leave that mist behind it. That mist at this point right here is going to give it distance and separation. And that's what you're going for. You know, you want to make it look like we're coming forward now towards us. That's what we're trying to tell the eye. And then you can just start tapping you out a little under it, you know, give it some body so it's just not one real skinny line running across your painting. And all I'm doing is tapping right here. That's all I'm doing. Just lightly tapping this color on. Now you can see how much lighter that color is by putting that little bit of white in it. And that gives you the illusion of distance. Now once you get that done, just come up here and just pull straight up and lift that brush up. It's kind of like a little flicking motion. Just flick that brush right out of that little foothill you just made, and that'll give you the indication of thousands and thousands of little trees back in the distance. Make sure they're straight up, or it's going to look like you got a real strong wind back there blowing them over. Just real lightly pulling them up. Now we want to come across the bottom and tap that out. We're going to give ourselves a layer of mist between this foothill, and we're going to make us another foothill. Now on our other foothill, we're going to have the color a little bit darker. So what I'll do is I'll add a little bit more of the blue in my brush when I get to it. And I'll add that into that same color. And just by adding that little bit of blue, it'll make it darker. And you know, it don't have to be a whole lot darker, but since it's coming forward, we do want it to be a little darker. All right, we'll grab just a tiny amount of the blue, bring it over here in the same color we were just using. And then, I know it looks like I'm using a lot of blue right here, but I'm not. I'm just barely touching that blue. And just tap the brush right down into it. Kind of loading up the edge of the brush. Now, when you come up here to do this step, make sure you don't kill that mist in it either. See how I'm below the mist, you can still see it. You want to leave that mist between them. That is so important. And then once you get your line across, you can come back now and start adding your little bit of body into it. And all you're doing is just tapping the same direction, but you're just coming down a little further with it to make it a little thicker. That's all you're doing. Just tapping. And we'll also try to straighten it out across the bottom now. Just real light taps, that's all it is. And if you get some paint under it, you know, while you're trying to keep it straight, don't worry about it. We got to have reflections here in a few minutes. So there's absolutely nothing to worry about right now. But now once you get this step here done, you can always come back up and do like we did on the top one. Just come through it and flick out the top, keeping it straight. That's the key, keeping them straight. And now that'll add more trees, or the illusion of trees, in that foothill. And you can see that layer of mist between them. And it just looks like they're separate. They're on those separate hills back there now. Now, right here, you want to come across and just pull straight down with that 2-inch brush. Pull that color right down into the water. Keep it as straight as you can. Now where it's thin in the middle, keep it kind of thin. Don't pull down as far. And it'll just make your reflections look like it's the same as the bank. Now once you get it all pulled down, you have to have a clean, dry brush. So knock as much of that paint out of there as you can. Just tapping it on a paper towel and come across real soft. And just gently rub across. And just like that, you'll have instant reflections. Now you don't want to use a lot of pressure when you're brushing across, because if you do, it'll just smear the paint real bad, and it won't even look like reflections. It'll just look like you just painted it, basically. And just like that, instant reflections. Now with your knife again, come up, get you another little tiny roll of paint on top of the knife this time. Come up and just straight as you can keep it. Keep that knife horizontal. Just work across like in a sawing motion. And just add in a waterline. Now you want to keep your waterline as straight as you can, because if you get off on one side or the other, it's going to make it look like the water's trying to flow that direction. Bob used to say you'd have to hang a bucket on the side of your canvas to catch it, because it looked like it'll run right out of your painting. All right, I got me a bad spot right there. I'm just going to come back up and work that out. There we go. Then you can come down here and just put you in a couple little shimmers of light if you want. Just, look like little, it just helps add to the effect of that being water. All right, now in that color we was using, I'm going to put the rest of my mountain mix, some sap green, some more blue. Just right now, all I'm looking for is a good dark color. We'll put some Van Dyke brown in it. We just basically using all the dark colors we got right now. We're going to make us a tree color here. Just take that knife, turn that paint over, mix it real good. Now I'm gonna use a fan brush right here. Make sure it's good and dry. Load it up on both sides. And you can see how I'm loading that fan brush. I'm just pulling it through the paint. Flip it over and pull the other side through. That's all I'm doing, is just loading it up with paint. A lot of people think you got to use a lot of pressure to build these trees, but just like a lot of other things in this technique, it's little pressure. So you just want to come up. First thing you want to do is just create you a trunk. Basically that line's there for guidance for when you start doing your needles. But using just a corner of the brush, when you come back up, that's why you want your brush loaded, good with paint, so you can just barely touch and get that little spot up top made, and then just very slowly work down, and then you can just start using that brush from side to side. Just make sure the middle's full and work out. And it's just tapping, that's all you're doing. Just coming straight down. Load your brush back up. Now when you get down to the bottom, you want to, you kind of want to keep it dark, but your bottom, I don't want to say it's not as important, but on these trees it's not as important because we got a couple more steps. We're gonna add some bushes and a few things like that a little later. But we'll come back up, load the brush again. Then we'll come right back up here and we'll give them a little friend. You know, everything needs a friend. Even a evergreen tree still needs a little friend. We'll come right back up here now. We won't make him as tall. I think on this one we'll keep it a little shorter. And we'll just come right up here into the mountain. Give ourselves that little line, that indication. Same thing here. Not a whole lot of pressure. Just keep that brush kind of laid over to the side a little and use the corner. And then the further you come down, you can start using a little bit more of the brush. And it'll just start letting your tree get wider and wider as you come down. Just like that. That's all it is to it. Alright, I think we're going to try to sneak one right there in the middle too. We'll let that be our little secret. We won't tell nobody about that one. And we'll just lightly tap him in. Just like so. That's all we got to do. And just like that, we've added us a few little evergreens there in our painting. All right, now we'll grab us a little white, maybe a little of that dark sienna. Make us kind of a light brown color. Get that little roll of paint right on the edge of the knife. And what we're going to do now is we're going to come up and we're just going to add a couple little trunks in our evergreens now. Just lightly tapping, letting that canvas pull off what it wants. You want to use a light pressure here because if you don't, you come up and smush that paint in and it'll just go to mud on you. Now once you get that done, grab your fan brush, come back into the green, maybe a little bit of the cad yellow. I think we'll even throw in a tad bit of the yellow ochre. Maybe a little bit. You don't want your highlights real bright, but you don't want them real dark either. They got to be lighter than the color that you got up there. Now using the corner of the brush again, just come right up and just start tapping us on a little bit of highlight color. But the one thing we want to be careful of here is not to add too much. You don't want to kill all that dark color. Right now you just want to kind of keep the corner of that brush loaded with paint and just lightly touch where you think the sun would be hitting. But don't kill all that dark area. Because you can put too much highlight on and it'll be just about as bad as not having any at all. Alright, load up again. Come up there. We'll put just a little bit on that middle one. He won't take near as much since he's the baby. All right, then we'll come out here on this last one. Same thing. Just lightly touch. Now, if you have trouble with your paint coming off the brush right here, you can add just a drop of thinner to your paint. Don't use much thinner at all. And just like that, you got your highlights on your evergreens. Now, using that half round brush, we're going to come right into the same color, that same dark color that we used to make all the trees with. Add a little bit more of the dark colors. Just want a real good dark color here. And we're gonna come right up at the bottom of these evergreens. Now we're gonna use a little bit of pressure right here. Probably a little more than we did everywhere else so far. But with a good amount of pressure, you just want to come up and just start tapping. And basically what you want to do here is just create a lot of little bush shapes. And the reason we're tapping these on, rather than just taking a brush and brushing them on, is we want that texture. Plus it'll give us the practice of making little bush shapes and little tree shapes. But we're just going to create a little peninsula here. We're just going to tap, bring it down kind of at a slight angle as you're working down and out. But that's all it is just tapping. And you can just keep this as dark as you can, because we're going to come back and add highlights to it. And it's basically just painting a little wedge. Alright, come over here in our highlight color. We'll get just a little bit of the yellow, a little bit of the sap green. Now, we won't load the brush up this time, but this is very little pressure. And I did wash the round brush. And see, just barely touching. You just want to come up. And while you do this, try to create individual little bushes. Don't just come up and go to tapping at random. Just, kind of build one. And sometimes you can just name them, give them a name. That may help some. All right, we'll come over in Indian yellow this time. We'll tap it right on the brush. Just load the paint up. Barely touching. And that gave you just a little bit of color change. And we'll come in here now, making sure not to kill all that dark. That is so important, not to kill all that dark. That dark's what's going to add depth to our painting. All right, let's grab a little of the red and bring it to the Indian yellow now. We'll make us kind of an orangey color. Oh, look at that. Ain't that pretty? Yeah, I like that color. I think we're going to end up making us another one of them. I do like that color. Maybe we'll add a little bit of the ochre to it. Make it just close to the same color. We'll come up here and add one up here. We need a color change in that area. Now see, you're ending up with little individual trees down here under that, like everything's coming forward. And you got to leave that dark back there to show that separation. All right, mix us a little more color up here. Come right up here. Make sure you'll see where I start at when I come back up here. I'm going to start by leaving some of that dark behind it. And just work that color in. And just like that, you've got a nice little wooded area there. And it's got a lot of dark and depth in it. Now we'll get some more of the dark color on the round brush. And we're going to come back up to the other side. Now this time we're going to do things a little different. We're just going to start tapping the brush on in little spots, little areas. We're still tapping, but I'm tapping around in kind of a tree shape, but I want to leave a lot of the sky showing through it. And you can see I'm just lightly tapping. Just making sure to leave a lot of the sky showing through. Just, wherever you think there'd be some limbs at, or some leaves. We'll come down about right there. Then we'll grab the script liner, get a little bit of thinner on it, and we'll bring it up into the Van Dyke brown and get it good and thin. You want it about the consistency of ink. And just roll it around in that Van Dyke brown. Get it loaded up with paint. We're going to come up. We're going to create us a trunk and some branches in our tree now. Just come up from the bottom. Or you can start at the top and come down. Whatever works best for you. Just, kind of make it thick enough that it looks like it's supporting that tree. Because that's a pretty good tree, so it's going to have a pretty good trunk in it. But then just give yourself some little branches. And it helps here if you can kind of, shake your hand a little and wiggle it. Make the branches look more natural that way. And a lot of them is going to get covered up when we come back up with our highlights. So they don't have to be perfect. That's the thing about it. Oil painting is really, really forgiving. Alright, now I'm using the oval brush. I'm going to come right back over here, my cad yellow and my sap green. Load the brush up, get it full of paint. Full of paint. Now when you come up this time and start tapping that color on real lightly, it is real important that you don't kill all the darks now. Because the tree's really going to need depth. And if you leave them dark areas in it, it'll look like you can see through the tree all the way to the other side. It'll look like you got limbs coming towards you and limbs going away from you. Very light touch, very light touch. Just keep the brush loaded. And again, if you have problems here with the paint coming off your brush, you can add just a drop of thinner. It does not take much thinner to get that paint to come off. And all we're doing is just creating little indications of leaves. That's all we're doing. Just try to keep in mind how a tree looks. That's all you got to do. We're not coming up there just tapping, anywhere and everywhere. We are trying to keep it looking like a tree. Little light taps, that's all it is. But see how I'm leaving some of that dark in it? You can already see that by leaving that dark, it gives it shadows and it gives it depth. Like you can see through the tree. Little light taps, that's all it is. And we're not going to cover up all of our trunk. We'll get down to about where those limbs come off. We'll stop it about right there. Maybe a little bit more on this bottom side here too. Across that bottom right there. About like that, that's all we need. And then just like that, we have a tree. All right, we're gonna go back to the round brush, the little half round, right back into the dark colors. And that's all we're doing is just using a real good dark color. Now I came down on that trunk a little bit, but I didn't want to kill it all. I wanted it to look like it was growing up out of that. And we're just gonna create us another little peninsula in here, just by tapping on, just like we did at the bottom. And just give it a little shape. And if you tap, a little bit down under it too far, don't worry about it. That'll end up as shadows. You just take and pull some of that paint straight down into the water. Just like so. That's all you got to do. Alright, then we'll come back over here. We're starting the yellow ochre. Now I got a little bit of alizarin crimson in that. And that'll give it kind of a peachy color. We'll come up. We'll start adding some highlights on this side. Tap a little bit of that color right down into your water. And it'll look like those little bushes are just reflecting right down into your lake. I think a color that we don't use a lot is real pretty in bushes. Sometimes it's blue. So I think we're gonna add us a couple little light blue bushes out there this time. And it's bright enough and it's pretty enough that it'll help pull your eye to the center too, just like red will. But I think they would I think a couple of blue bushes out there would be something different, add a little flavor to our painting. So we'll just come up, we'll add a little bit of blue. And it don't take much. Very little. And we'll put a little of that color in the water. That'll help with our reflections too. All right, now with a 2-inch brush, come up here and very lightly pull over those colors. Be real careful right here. That is such a light touch. And then gently brush across, very gently. Then we'll take our knife, some Van Dyke brown, come right up here and we'll put us a little bit of land in between our water and our bushes, just to give us a little bit of land under it to hold it up. Then we'll use just a tiny amount of, I'm gonna put just a little bit of blue in that color we was using earlier, that dark center and white. Just kind of gray it down. And it's also got a little bit of that blue in it. But just like that, just come up, touch you just a tiny amount of highlight on that. And then take your knife, come back up, give yourself a little water line under there, maybe a couple little ripples. And then, with a script liner and some red, I'll come over, put my H on it. And you put whatever you want to on yours to sign yours. And I really, really hope you guys enjoyed this painting. It was a lot of fun to paint. I think it's very, very beginner friendly. I think if you want to try it, I don't think you'll have any problems at all painting it. It's not a very hard painting at all to do. I think you'd have a lot of fun, I really do. And now, the hard part. We got to clean up. We got to clean up the brushes and clean up our work area. But if y'all will, please share this. And please comment on it. Let me know what you think. And if you don't already subscribe to my channel and you like seeing tutorials like this, it'll just help my channel grow. It makes it a little more easier for me to make more tutorials. And by all means, if you got any questions at all, reach out. Ask me anything. I don't care. That's why I'm here. I'm here to help teach you, and all I can do is teach you what I know, but I'm more than willing to help you. Thank you for joining me here on Painting with Harold.